Hey everybody, it's me, it's Miss Angela, and today I'm in Indianapolis, which is the capital of the state of Indiana, which is really far away from Lawrenceville. It's been 2 months since I saw all y'all's lovely, smiling faces. I miss you every day. I'm constantly thinking about and praying for y'all. And since it's been so long, I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about how coronavirus has been for me, all this COVID stuff going on. So I am a flight attendant. So you got my wings there. It's actually got, there we go. It's got my name on it. And I have to wear a mask and gloves to work. So every time I get on a plane, I have a mask and gloves on, but I'm in a hotel right now, so I don't have to wear mask and gloves. And there are lots of people on my planes, a lot of my guests, they always have their masks and gloves on too. And the interesting thing about being in aviation and working on airplanes is a lot of people are scared, and not just because of COVID-19, but also because of flying. So flying during COVID-19 and being afraid of getting sick and passing it on to the people you love, that's like double scary for a lot of people. But I was reading my Bible, and I just read through one of my favorite Bible stories recently, and that's all about what to do when we're scared. And because I have so much time in these hotels and between flights, I've taken up painting a lot. I travel with my watercolors in my suitcase. So it's something fun to do on the 3.5-hour waits between flights. So I painted some of the things that go on in one of my favorite stories in the Bible, which is the story of Esther. Now, Esther wasn't very different from you and me. She had a mom and a dad, and she had an older cousin whom she loved very much. But then something kind of out of the ordinary happened. We don't know exactly how, the Bible doesn't tell us how, but what happened was Esther's mommy and daddy died, but like I said, she had Mordecai, and Mordecai took her in and adopted her and raised her up, raised her the way her own mommy and daddy would have. Now, in the meantime, there was this king, and his name was, so the title for king in Persia, which is where they were, was Ahasuerus, and if you can say that on the first try, good on you. It's kind of a long word. It's kind of difficult. Well, Ahasuerus was very lonely, and he was like, well, I'm a king. I should have a queen. So because Ahasuerus didn't really care much about the inside of people, their hearts and their minds, especially not of women, he was mostly concerned about finding a pretty wife. So he held this huge beauty contest. It was like Miss America, but in Persia, so it was like Miss Persia. And he said, the most beautiful woman is going to be my wife. And that beautiful woman was Esther. So he married Esther, and she became the queen, and she moved into the palace to live with Ahasuerus and be his wife. Well, in the meantime, now Mordecai wasn't allowed to live in the palace with her, which is really sad, so she missed him a lot. But in the meantime, Mordecai overheard these two guys talking, and they were going to overthrow the king, which means they were sick and tired of him being king, and they wanted to do something about it, and it was not going to be good. So Mordecai figured out a way to report it to the king, and the king was super happy about it. So King Ahasuerus said, Mordecai, that was awesome. You saved my life. He had the bad guys arrested and put in a dungeon. And he made Mordecai a judge because Mordecai was so smart and had such a good conscience. So things went on pretty well, except there was this one guy named Haman. And Haman was not very nice. He didn't get along very well with Mordecai because Haman was the really big deal and like the king's best friend. But then the king made Mordecai really important, and Haman didn't like for anybody to be more important than he was, which is kind of a sore loser kind of way of living your life. So the king found out, sorry, not the king, so Haman found out that Mordecai was Jewish, and he figured out a way to get rid of that. He told the king that there was this population of people living in Persia, and that the Hebrews, or the Jews, were going to disobey all the king's rules and try to overthrow him, which is a lie, which is not good. Well, the king believed him because he thought that Haman was his friend. So he wrote a law that was supposed to go into effect that was going to have all of the Hebrews, all of the Jews, including Mordecai, arrested. But the king didn't know that Mordecai was Jewish. Well, the king also didn't know that Esther was Jewish. Otherwise, I don't think he would have signed the law. Well, Mordecai heard about this law, and he went to Esther and said, Haman put this rule into Haman talked the king into signing this rule, and it's going to be really bad, and they're going to kick us out of Persia, and then we'll be homeless, and they might arrest a bunch of us and put us in the dungeon and separate us from our families. And Esther, you're the queen. You have to do something. Now, it kind of seems like a no-brainer, right? When your family, when your entire way of life is in danger. Kind of like some people think the way this COVID thing is happening now. Kids can't go to school like they used to. Summer's coming on. Summer camps are canceled. We can't go to church. People can't go visit their sick grandparents in nursing homes or hospitals. I'm sure you've even noticed that, like, stores, you have to wear a mask, and a lot of people wear gloves too and stay really far away from each other. You can't hug people. And I bet that if this whole thing scared you, if you could do something to change it and to stop it and to protect the people you love, I bet you would. But here's the thing. Ahasuerus, like I said, he was the king. And the Persians, they believed that the king was almost kind of like God. You had to obey him at all times. If not, you could be arrested and put in the dungeon and it wouldn't be good. Well, Esther knew who God was, and she knew that Ahasuerus wasn't God. He was just a person. But he was a person with a lot of power. And if she told him if she contradicted his law, if she went against the rule that he made, then he could put her in prison. He might not repeal or end this law just because she said so. And here's the thing, Esther, she might have been a really pretty lady, but she was a woman. And in ancient Persia, they didn't really give much thought to what women think. They didn't really care about what women think, which isn't fair. Esther was really smart. And she had a really good heart. And she loved God. And she was worth listening to. It wasn't fair, but I'm glad that things are different now. So Esther talked to Mordecai and said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to fast and pray for 3 days. So fasting meant that they weren't going to have food. And they might just drink minimal amounts of water. And they were going to pray and read their Bibles. Well, they didn't really have a Bible at that time. They had the Torah. And the Torah had the whole story of all of the good things that God did for them. How he brought Jacob and his sons and the entire nation of Israel out of slavery. They had that and had all their laws about what was good and right. And it had the story of how God brought them to the promised land and the words of all these prophets and the stories of previous kings who loved and obeyed God. So they read their Torah, which was the early version of the Bible, because a lot of it hadn't been written yet. And they prayed, and they sang songs, and they didn't eat food. because the idea was that they were supposed to be relying on God to keep them healthy. So after 3 days, praying and fasting and singing. And Esther did it too in the palace. She had all these handmaids, all these women who were supposed to comb her hair and do her makeup and bring her food and help her get dressed and do her laundry and make her bed and clean up her room. All those things that we usually do for ourselves. Well, Esther didn't necessarily have to do them because she was a queen. So she got all of her handmaids, who weren't even Jewish, to pray and fast with her because it was so important. And they believed that God would figure out a way. Now, here's the thing. Esther, like I said, she was scared. But Mordecai, her cousin, said something really important to her. He said, if you keep silent at this time, if you stay quiet at this time, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews at another time, but you might die. So Mordecai had faith that one way or the other, God was going to help the Hebrews, that God was going to help them. But he was scared too. He was scared that something bad that the king wouldn't do the right thing, and that he might arrest or hurt Esther for contradicting him or for trying to stop him when in Persia he had complete power. But then he said something else. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this, and for such a time as this. So Mordecai was basically saying, well, I know God is going to help the Hebrew people because he promised so many times in these earlier books of the Bible, in Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, all these others, all the hymns, the Psalms that David wrote, God did promise that he was going to take care of the Hebrews. But Mordecai said, who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this, which basically means, but for all we know, you, Queen Esther, are the person that God is going to use to save us now. I know that it will come, that help is going to come, that rescue, deliverance is the fancy word for rescue. I know it's going to come. But I think you might be the person that God intended to rescue us. You were the one that God appointed to be queen. Ahasuerus didn't pick you on accident. God made you exactly as you are because he knew exactly what you were capable of doing, and he put you in the position to do exactly that. Then Esther told Mordecai, go gather all the Hebrews to be found in Susa, which was the name of the city in Persia. Go gather all the Jews to be found in Susa, and fast, and do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. And my handmaidens and I will also fast as you do. Then I will go to the king and tell him to repeal the law. And if bad things happen, then bad things happen. Then Mordecai went away and did everything as Esther told him. So we see a lot of people who are a little bit scared. And of course, you can guarantee that the second Mordecai heard about Haman's rule, that he had the king right, he told all of his Jewish friends. And now they were scared too. Something really awesome happened. So after these 3 days, Esther, who had not eaten or had anything to drink for 3 days, She put on a huge banquet, a big feast, threw a huge party, and invited Ahasuerus and Haman. And she put on her prettiest robes, and she did her makeup and her hair to make herself presentable for her husband and his most important advisor. And then she said, "My king, there's somebody that you trust, but he's trying to wipe out, he's trying to evict, which means to make people move. He's trying to get rid of a huge population, a huge number of people, and he's lied about it. And on top of that, it puts two people that you love very much at risk, two people that you trust." And King Ahasuerus said, "What?" She said, "It's Haman." There he is right there. Does he look very happy? That guy in the middle? No. Does Esther look happy? Didn't think so. What about the king? Does King Ahasuerus look happy? Doesn't look like a happy king. Because you see, he trusted Haman, and then Haman had him write this law. King Ahasuerus at first was like, well, of course that law is going to go into effect. Haman said that they're going to break my laws and try to overthrow me and put a different king in place. And I don't want that to happen. I have to protect myself. I have to protect the rest of the palace. And Esther said, well, he's lying. And besides, I'm Jewish. And Mordecai, remember the guy that saved your life? He's Jewish. The king goes, this Mordecai? Whoop, wrong picture. This Mordecai? Yes, that Mordecai. The king said, well, we can't have that. So you know what he did? He had Haman arrested and put in the dungeon. And not only that, he did it to Haman's sons. Haman had a bunch of sons who were pretty much grown-ups by that time. And he had them arrested too, because he thought that maybe if Haman, their daddy, who was responsible for raising them and teaching them right from wrong, betrayed me, maybe he's taught his sons the same thing. And since Haman was important, his sons would have been important too. He didn't want important people to be the kind of people to betray him or his queen. But you see, Ahasuerus, he loved Esther. And Mordecai was his friend. And he actually ended up making Mordecai even more important. So all of it's kind of like Haman was the king's vice president, more or less, and chief advisor. So all this important stuff that the king had going on, because kings are really busy. They've got an entire country to run. And back in the days before computers and cell phones and all these other nice little things, instant communications, video messages, you had a lot more to do. And Haman took care of all of that. Well, Haman just proved that he couldn't be trusted, but Mordecai saved his life. And Mordecai was a really good judge. And he was fair, and he was just, and turns out he was the person who raised Esther to be fair and just too. So here's the cool thing. You know what happened after all of this? Esther, the queen, made an important law. She dedicated the Feast of Purim, which is still celebrated to this day. This is thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, before America was even discovered. Thousands of years ago. This is before Jesus was born. Way before that. And the Jewish people still celebrate Purim to this day. To celebrate Esther, and all the good things that happened because she was brave. And Mordecai because of all the good things that happened because he was brave. So, what can we learn from all of this? This whole COVID thing has a lot of people really scared. And you know, it's actually kind of okay to be scared. It's one thing to be fearless and to not be afraid at all. But what it means to be brave is to be afraid, but to do the right thing anyway. And Esther was afraid that she might get arrested, but she still told the king that his law was wrong and unjust and not fair. And Mordecai, he could have gotten in trouble too, and actually he did kind of have a few run-ins with Haman. They weren't friends, they didn't like each other very much. But he still refused to treat Haman a certain way. He was never rude to Haman because he knew that God didn't want him to be rude to Haman. Haman might not have been very nice to him, but God still made Haman and had a plan for him. So Mordecai was polite to him the way he was supposed to be. But he didn't bow down when Haman walked by like Haman wanted him to do. Because Haman wasn't God and wasn't worthy of Mordecai bowing down. And it almost got him in a lot of trouble, wouldn't you say? But they did the right thing. So in light of all of this, I'm going to ask you guys today, what's the right thing to do? What's something you can do to make today a little bit less scary for somebody you love? See, for me it's easy, because there are lots of people who are afraid of flying, people who are afraid of being so high off the ground and not in control of the airplane. They're just sitting there in the back and trusting that the pilots are in control of the plane and are going to get us there safely. And see, isn't that what we do? We're all in a plane, so to speak. But God is in the flight deck. He's got his hand on the steering yoke, and he's going to get us through this safely. So if you're not afraid, or if you are afraid of what's going on, it makes you a little bit nervous, look for something brave you can do. Look for the right thing to do. And you know what? Maybe the right thing isn't even necessarily the brave thing. Maybe you're not afraid of doing something that seems good to do, but do it. Do it, and you will make this so much easier. And then when we're on the other side of this, we'll do just like Esther and the Jews did. Once the law was repealed, once the law was ended, and Haman was arrested, we're going to have a big party. I guarantee it. Everybody's going to be so excited, and we're going to hug again, and we're going to go to church again, and I will see all of you in person. And I have been saving very special surprises for all of you from the airplane. And I can't wait to give them to y'all in person. Sometimes when I have a little kid on my plane that's afraid of flying, I give them a pair of wings and tell them that flight attendants, gosh darn, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. See, my name tag, it's shaped like wings, right? So I give them a pair of wings that look a lot like mine. And I tell them that flight attendants and pilots, we wear our wings to remind us that even when things are scary and seem a little out of control, we can be brave. The wings help us be brave for other people. And that's not entirely true. I don't magically get superpowers just when I put on my name tag in my uniform. My brave doesn't come from a pair of wings. My courage, my bravery comes from God. He helps me get through helping He helps me help other people get through being scared. So how is God using you to help people who are scared right now or sad right now? Look for a way to make somebody smile today. Praying for you guys. I love you very much. And I pray that God will help you help other people be brave, just like Esther.